to get started. I'm just going to take a moment to review what we covered yesterday and introduce what we're going to cover today. And I'm going to turn over the floor to Professor Bajpai to talk to us primarily about research design and data gathering. Okay, so yesterday we discussed a number of topics. Defining empirical methods, exploring the role of empirical methods in law, developing intuitions about causal inference. We talked about some examples of articles that cited data and attempted to draw claims about causation. And we took some time to think about the ways in which we might criticize those arguments, or at least we might have reason to reserve judgment on whether there are causal relationships being described or not. We talked about prediction as distinguished from causation, and the fact that some questions in law, we don't need to know a causal relationship. We simply need to know whether there's a reliable predictive relationship between two things. This is the do I need to bring an umbrella question rather than what causes it to rain question. And we also distinguished positive questions and descriptive questions from the normative and prescriptive. All right, so today we're going to focus on a handful of different topics. So we're going to begin with the first half of our lecture today with the discussion of data gathering, hypothesis generation, and testing. And then in the second half of our lecture today, we will return to the material that we began to touch on last time, which were mathematical concepts for describing data, and then statistical techniques for testing hypotheses, including specifically linear regression analysis. So with that, I'll turn it over to you.
So, very good afternoon to all of you. Say good afternoon, please. Okay. You know, I'll just, try to deal with two things in today's, first half. This is a 5 days program, and sometimes for me it looks too ambitious to cover everything in terms of empirical methods in these 5 days. Canvas is really too vast. So please try to understand that we would like to skip, not really, oversimplify or under-emphasize anything which we skip as if it is not important. Everything is important, but allow us to take up certain things in a manner so that they become usable. The objective with which we are going into this workshop is to enable you in terms of doing. I always say the best way to learn research methodology is to do research. There cannot be any better method to learn research methodology. And doing means the most critical part of this learning is that doesn't matter how much I speak, but most of the things would be understood in action. So when you are in action, the real learning happens. So here what I will do, William has given me a kind of task. Come to this side. Be free, no problem. You can put it this way if you are not comfortable. You can place your desk. The first thing that he suggested, and when we were working on the course, that this is the second day. First day overview was given to you. Now today we have two very important choices, and probably that will generate some discussion and some understanding on certain subjects. So sometimes what we say that initially we say what are the basics of legal research and all those things. Instead, what I would say, I would just make a small presentation unfortunately all the things are not ready with me in terms of that paper which we have circulated on a web. So a paper which I have done, I think last year or before that even, which carries an empirical methodology. And I will discuss that paper, especially from the viewpoint of its methodology. And in between, I would try to engage in some discussion on, specifically on research questions and hypotheses. And I'll take you to the stage of verification of hypothesis. And from there on, I think Professor William will take over. So, I'm using a PowerPoint for today's session. You know, I'm presenting you a study which we have conducted a couple of years ago. And that study, yesterday I said, you have to read method in legal writing. The reading method in legal writing is not only a matter of research methodology, it is also a matter of temperament. So temperamentally also you have to be a researcher. You know what is the very subtle difference between temperamentally a researcher? Temperamentally a researcher means whenever you read, you try to underscore the method involved in it. And the assumption that we carry in this process is there is a method always, in every kind of writing. Sometimes the method is manifest and at times it is underlying, explicit or implicit. So we have to underscore that method. So one study I will be presenting, and through that study, I am going a little reverse. Through that study, I will try to discuss how to formulate a research problem. This is very important. Yesterday I said to you that every step in research methodology is interlinked. So if one step goes wrong, it has a detrimental effect on the subsequent steps. Like for instance, if you have not done the formulation of your research problem in a correct manner, you would always be, struggling as far as the remaining stages are concerned, be it objective writing, hypothesis, even all those things. Yesterday I have also pointed out one thing. I know you don't listen everything, but I'm sure you listen certain things. So one of the things that I said yesterday, that you have to plan your study in a manner so that the required degree of data generation becomes possible. Data generation, who will make data generation possible? Your research design. At times you find that your study has not collected the data which was required in view of the objectives and in view of why. Here the lack of incorporating the important variables or important hypotheses or research question becomes very important. So like for instance, my research problem is such where I need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 kind of data. In other words, reading the demand of data. Please write down this word. Reading the demand of data has to be understood through your objectives, through your hypothesis. Because every research demands a certain degree of data. Am I clear to you? The moment you formulate a research question, the demand of data is always generated. Many a times, we fail to read the demand of the data. Please try to understand, this is not written in any book. I am telling you, this is my own way of exploring a topic. This is not written. The demand of data word is basically a kind of phrase I use because every research is limited in scope. Research is never unlimited. Research is always specific to certain dimensions, certain aspects. Now, once you have limit your research, immediately the demand of data is limited. Now, few things I'll take you to there. I'll like, for instance, I'll start with the research problem to save the time. So here I have a study in mind where I am trying to understand what is the victim in criminal justice process and empirical study. Now, if this is the research, so my formulation of research problem is like this. Is it okay with you? Now, this time I am doing a reverse exercise. First I am showing you a draft of a research problem. Then I will tell you how the problem can be drafted. One more thing you can write forever in your notebook and paste it before your table. Everything that you do in research is informed by certain principles. Like if I have drafted this research problem, so there are certain principles of problem formulation. It is not a random thing. It is informed by certain steps, certain methods, certain protocols. And that is what I always insist. I'm not insisting. You can write better than this. But what is important to know how it has been created. You will immediately click a picture of this and you can. But I can guarantee you, you will not be able to write. Why? Because you can copy the content. You may not be able to understand the principles which we have, provided in the drafting of it. So what are the principles behind the formulation of a research problem? I would attach more importance on this, because if you know what are the principles, in drafting a research problem, then you would be in a better position to do that. Am I clear to everybody? Please, you can anytime you can chip in. Now, for instance, I will just like a honest kind of feedback from you. If you read this passage, this may not be very excellently done. It's I have just created for you. But this is a study. Can anybody tell me what does it tell? Is there anything that you find peculiar in it? What does it convey?
Specific issues.
Specific issues. Specific issues. Yeah, so this is it. Yeah. Anything else that you find? Please let me know.
There is more focus on the hostile witness.
That is a method, only method. We are not talking criminal law.
Doctrinal and non-doctrinal.
Pardon?
Doctrinal and non-doctrinal.
Doctrinal and non-mix-up. Yesterday we did. Fine. Now, for a minute, I'll hold you on one thing. As I said, research is a process. Now, from this research problem, we will generate the objective. From this problem only, we will generate hypotheses. And then those hypotheses will be finally, require a particular data demand, and then you will go on collecting that data. Now, for instance, in this, I am saying issues and problems relating to what is, bold. You look at the bold letters, and you will read that issues and problems relating to the witness. Now, when you go for contemplating a research problem, you never prepare this kind of thing. First, you will do a lot of, homework. So, listing of the issue, again, this is a keyword. Please note, listing of the variables, oblique issues, to be incorporated in the drafting of the problem. So, before you pick up your pen for drafting a research problem, the issues in a sequential manner must be there in your mind. Because research has to answer certain questions. So unless there is a problem, there cannot be a research. There should be a problem. Research is a journey from question to answer. The simplest. So if there is a question, then there would be a journey. Journey means research process, various steps. Now let us look at how the issues can be identified. Now I have a minute ago I said, please list the issues and variables. What are the variables and what are the issues? Sometimes you think in terms, if you are a regular researcher, you can directly think of the variables because you have experience. But if you are a kind of new researcher into a particular area, you will think very generally that these are the aspects, whatever you may call it. List those down. If you have done the right kind of listing, probably you would be in a position to weave them into a writing. But please remember, research, drafting, and especially the problem part, is a kind of depiction of certain issues, certain factors that you intend to put in, and that will happen. So I am saying here issues and problems relating to witness in certain criminal offences. So more very specific. Second, if you see the specific factors responsible for the hostility of the witnesses. No? Then you also look at the significant judgment, perception of witnesses, and witness protections. These issues will emerge. Now, what is the principle which is informing this exercise? I'll just go to that and then we can look at. So basically, we apply the scientific method. Scientific method means hypotheses are formulated, research plan is developed, data is collected. This is a general model which we, why it is not figuring? It is visible to me.
See, you have to do steps in research. Can we have some discussion on that also?
I think we are unable to translate it. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Take it. Actually, various steps, no? It's a genuine question that what should be the starting point for research. Yes, I agree. Now the question is, when you, sometimes the topic is given to you, given is inverted comma, sometimes a thought occurs to you. I always say, from my own experience I can say, it is not very difficult to think of a research topic. It is very thing to make it researchable. So there is a difference between, because you may have a very fantastic idea in your mind, but when it comes to really doing the research on that particular issue, you will find that you are not able to make it researchable. That is what I am saying. We are talking about the crystallization of a kind, which must lead to some specific aspects which would be measurable. Because in empirical research, you have to think in measurable terms. What is measurable? Measurable means you should be able to, so suppose I am doing a study, say, on witnesses protection. No, this is a very general witness protection. Protection against whom? Protection against what kind of protection? Something where yesterday I said, empirical research, the core thing is where observations can be made. Where observation cannot be made, nothing can be done. So you have to take your research up to that level where you are ready to make observation. Now this is the entire exercise. So I have a fantastic idea, but I am unable to proceed up to the stage of making observation. When you will be able to make observation? When you have done a sort of quantification. Quantification means a qualitative variable has been translated into quantitative. So suppose I said, he is a privileged person. Privileged people are better protected in the system. No, privileged means now I need a operational definition for privileged person. So privileged person can be empirically, what are the empirical reference? You know, this term is very important, empirical reference. Yesterday we said empirical reduction. So what are the indicators of privilege? Indicators are measured. So if I say socioeconomic status, so means we are indicating that these are the, like we have a what we call BMI. You know? Now every cell phone has BMI. Now BMI, you know what are the variables in BMI? Your height, your weight, and so now your BMI. So BMI is enough. BMI has become a concept. Now indicators of BMI are very clearly identified. So in empirical research, nobody stops you using concepts as long as you are able to operationalize them. Operationalization. This is also a term. Please know, operationalization. So in fact, the entire empirical research is a sort of struggle to translate the concept into variables and variables into indicators. Concept, I think one more slide, and probably I'll be able to show you that also. Hey,
I think the question was very specific.
Yeah.
Can you frame any research question without knowing the subject, without exploring the subject matter?
I think your question itself answers it. You know, because if you are asking a question, the basic thing is always happening. You have certain thought in mind. It's not changing. Yes. Please look at. Yes. It's that you know, you always have, he has asked what is the first thing that in your mind. So sometimes you have a research area, like you have a research area, you say environmental law. Then you have a research topic in mind. You said, I will be doing compliance with regard to a particular environmental policy. Then you have a general research question. Now your research question is to what extent a particular guideline of NGT is being complied with. Then you have a specific research question. A specific research question, you want to know in last 3 months how many violations with regard to environmental compliances have taken place. A specific. And with respect to industry. And even within industry you said the glass industry. I think I have said again a very important thing in between. The key thing in empirical research is your ability to be specific. If you are not specific, you cannot do it. So you have to come to that core which you are talking. It will start from general. You look at here, can you see? It starts generally from. So I have a kind of thought that I have to do a research on what are the external consideration in the grant of bail. So I have a kind of vague idea that judges go beyond the law in granting the bail. Suppose this is my idea. Now I have to translate this idea into a researchable topic. Every thought process starts like. So I have a research topic in mind, I am doing external consideration in bail. Third, general research question. My general research question is, the people with status are more likely to get bail even in non-bailable offences. Whether it is true or not, this is general. A specific research question, whether the people with political backgrounds are more likely to be granted bail in even heinous offences like murder or rape. Specific. And in past 5 years, how many such things have? So past 5 years, with a particular profile of people in specific cases of violations, how many times? Now look at this fourth block. Can you see this fourth specific research question? If this is the research question, does it not ask you to go for a particular data? If I want to know in past 5 years, in 2 districts of Delhi, how many people with political background were able to secure bail in murder and rape cases? This is a very, we started from general, external consideration. Now we have not gone to the external. Once we identify the sources of information, now my sources of information are getting fixed because I have specifically formulated this. Now this specific and narrow, these terms are very important. Ability to get narrowed is very important. The moment you are able to draw a line for your research concept, then you are for a particular set of information. And the moment you limit the concept or the variables, immediately the demand of data is generated. The moment I pose this research question, that's what I said. I always say why research questions are important. People say, well, they guide you. I said, fine, they guide you. But I would always like to underline that research questions are a demand note. Demand note of a sort, asking you or rather driving you to collect a particular kind of information. In other words, if you are able to collect that information, you would be able to justify your research question. Your research question will remain unanswered if you remain, unsuccessful in it. That's why we say why a hypothesis has to be sharply formulated. And yesterday I gave you an example that hypotheses are formulated and they are forgotten. I have seen theses where hypotheses are not dead, though they have been formulated. It means your research design was not consciously created in a manner where there was a specific linkages between the hypothesis and the kind of data you have collected. So you will find many theses. I think it would be a good exercise to look at the disjunction between the hypothesis and the findings arrived. The ideal situation would be your findings and hypothesis must go together. Now here, the entire ability of researcher happens. If you are in a doctoral kind of research or an empirical kind of research, you have to mobilize all your material and information towards verifying your hypothesis. So I think this is called the direction. Now you have given a direction to your material. Now please, direction to your material and information. Now your material that you have collected is now being addressed towards the hypothesis verification. So suppose I have a hypothesis that there are external consideration in the grant of bail, X by 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of external consideration. Now the material that you have gathered, whether this material is answering or really verifying this hypothesis or not. So there would be a kind of relationship you are. So indirectly you have created the variables. Now I'll come to hypothesis and then I'll discuss the relationship between the variables. But I'll go back to the research that I was dealing with. So let us go to the example which I have created. So now suppose I have to go to other slide. दूसरी slide पे जाना है तो कैसे? इससे तो ये तो PowerPoint मोड में चला गया। नहीं दूसरा PowerPoint और है ना? अच्छा बस नहीं वहाँ Technology is never a bliss. Suppose this is bad. Double click. वहाँ में बात जो आप करो मत मुझे बताओ ना वो तो मैं समझ गया अल्टरनेट now I am coming I have created certain objectives from that problem. So my study has following objectives. To outline the relevant legal provision, to examine the issue of austerity, and blah blah blah. It is not important that I have drafted it. What is important is what we have to see. Can anybody tell me what is the main question which is important between these two slides? The one which I have shown you earlier and this one. What you have to check is whether these objectives are emerging from my research problem or not. Sometimes I have seen your research problem is one thing and your objectives are other thing and your hypothesis is still third thing. I want to establish a kind of sync between these processes. And this you can only do if you have done this thought process in terms of creating the issue. So suppose you have listed issue and you have created and drafted your research problem with the help of those issues. Now you are converting these issues which you have described in this research problem into the research object. Why the objectives are written? Can anybody tell me? A specific answer, which is generally clear. Why the objective? What is the characteristics of the objective?
To set the direction of research.
One objective, as far as possible, one variable. So we are now segregating in order to clearly depict the coverage and the scope of the research. So suppose I have created 5 objectives or 6 objectives, but these objectives must be present in your problem. Now if you look back, these yellow things have been converted into the objective. If you see, so always underline these keywords in your problem and this thing will figure. So in this study which I have circulated, you can check that the issues have been taken from this problem. Still, if I come to hypothesis, now I have to create certain hypothesis for this study. I have just, we can draft still better, but there are hypotheses. So suppose I am saying the hardship of witnesses are normally associated with police behavior. Now again, these hypotheses must be addressing to your core research problem. Sometimes your hypothesis is created in such a way which has no relevance to the research problem. So the first task in today's session is to establish and to really emphasize that there ought to be a relationship between these 3 exercises. How to do is that I am coming to it. But in principle that I am trying to convey you that you have to read a kind of linkage between these things. Now, now I am for a moment, returning to this research question and other things. Yes. So several types of questions we can create or different type of hypotheses we create. In sometimes we are merely describing a descriptive question that the increase or the better service condition in police would lead to, better police-public relationship. It is a very descriptive kind of hypothesis. But if I want to examine the relationship, do you find some difference between descriptive? What is the example of studying the relationship between the variables when it comes to hypothesis question?
Dependency.
So basically it means now we are talking about the relationship between two variables. So a hypothesis ideally will involve two variables, dependent and independent, and most importantly, we are trying to look at the relationship between the variables. Now in the field of law, going to this micro level is a challenging thing, I agree. Because we have a different methodology of studying law. We study law through case laws and all that. I recently tried one very interesting thing. So I was reading a judgment, court judgment. So court says that I think I have given this question somewhere in one of my papers. So suppose court says that the juveniles with troubled family life are more likely to indulge in juvenile delinquency in their later life. Troubled background, troubled family life, tense parental relationship. So for law student, I particularly feel that hypothesis generation is possible a lot from studying the case laws. If you study the cases, you will find in obiter, the judges tend to throw a lot of ideas. They talk about so many factors responsible for a situation. You as a legal researcher can pick up many things from those cases and make some good hypotheses out of it. And identify some relationship. Like here, I have given this exercise to one student. If one judgment came, I have forgotten the citation. So I think Salim Bali had some case. So there the judge is saying that I am finding the juvenile recidivism is a major issue, and it is mostly on account of a tense family relationship, tense parental relationship for the child. Now I have a very good hypothesis whether the troubled family history is a factor in juvenile recidivism or not. Now a clear hypothesis has been given to it. And this thing is measurable. Means to what extent the child was okay with the family, or if he had a troubled history with family, and his chances of becoming juvenile recidivism. Juvenile recidivism rate in the country is not very high. But I think in Delhi we have done a study, so we have done a case study of 50 juvenile recidivists. And we found that they all have, I think around 68% had a difficult family history, especially the tense relationship with the parents. Now, my question is whether this relationship can be studied through a research design. Now this is a hypothesis. Court says so it doesn't become a rule. It is only a hypothesis. Yes.
Sir, I just wanted to clear that difference question, please. Can you please explain with example?
So difference question means we are sometimes trying to ask what is the difference. Difference means, suppose I am saying whether a situation which is a change situation, like increase in education, does it lead any difference in the law conforming behavior or social conformity? So a person who is better educated are more likely to be conforming to the laws or not. So there are various, and one more I think relationship question. Look at, yes, descriptive question and relationship question. So it's really not, we in social sciences, generally the cause-effect relationship is not seen in typically that the way we look at in science, but to some extent we can look at the cause and effect in a very controlled situation. Psychologists are more likely to study cause and effect relationship. So only thing we see whether the two variables have, so is there any association between self-esteem and eating behaviors among collegiate female swimmers? Now this is a kind of question which was posed here. Now difference question you said. Experimental research means difference between two groups. So if I have two groups, experimental group and control group. Now this is very interesting. I think those who are in my class in coursework, they know we have developed a very good exercise. There is a book by Tyler, Why People Obey the Law. Please read that. Why People Obey the Law. You know, Tyler. I think this is a fantastic book to learn research methodology. And he said he had done exactly the difference question study. He said why people, and he has certain hypotheses. He has two hypotheses major. Why people obey the law. Generally we look at why people violate the law. Tyler made a book. This book is available I think online also. So please check this book. And it's empirical study. He said there are two things that make the people to obey the law. And now look at how a research design is created to make empirical observations. He said, first variable, he said, legitimacy of the authority. First variable, he said, if according to the people, the authority is legitimate, the people are more likely to follow the laws. Now he has done an experiment on traffic violation. Why people obey the traffic rules and why people violate. But he has looked at majorly why people obey the traffic law. So in a particular city in the US, he studied this and he found that most people had a kind of faith and attitude of legitimacy towards the authority about its sanctity, and therefore people think that authority is legitimate and they do good things and they are responsible for an orderly community, and therefore we should also follow the law. One. And he tested this hypothesis in a controlled manner. Second, he said procedural fairness. He said, very interesting conclusion. He found that people do not mind paying fine for the traffic violation as far as they know that they have been subjected to a fair procedure. So if I am wrong, I have jumped the red light and everybody is being fined like me. If not all, some of them are like in Delhi, you will find you show your identity card and some of them are just made to pass. Then you develop a kind of annoyance. So if you are convinced about the procedural fairness, you are more likely to follow the law, or in the event of violation, without any resistance, you would like to take recourse to whatever is asked. Now, this variable has been, translated into empirical, situation, and it was done. So probably this is the situation. Now, I'll again revert to the study to discuss the findings in next 10-15 minutes. Yes, I think now a word which I would like to use, problem distillation. Distilling like we have distilled water. Now ultimately you have to refine the question or idea into a problem and making it sufficiently specific so that it is amenable to investigation. So now you see so many things you start. A very typical thing is you will read a lot of literature. Invariably when you are into a research, you will not only read the literature, you will collect a lot of literature. Now, how the problem distillation is possible from your readings that you are doing on that subject. I think no book writes this particular issue, but I am of the confirmed belief that most people find it difficult to translate the problem aspect from their readings. You read 10-20 books, but in the end you will still find that kuch baat bani nahi. You think that there is something, what to do with this literature. You have downloaded 2 TV material on your computer, but ultimately this material will not help you. Distillation has to happen. Means your ability to, take what is the problem aspect and how to make it a problem. Problem in the sense that a research problem. So second step is, this process should lead to the development of a statement of the problem that is clear, concise and definite. So suppose I read a book on how people obey the law, or witness that I am saying, how to create a research problem. I think what you need to, at some stages in this course, or I would like you to please draft a research problem on your own choice topic. Please do that. Then you will realize that the drafting of the problem, how it can be done. So a statement of problem would be a specific, it can be a question form. Sometimes I have used the questions also in my drafting. It can be declarative, and you can make a statement where you are also talking about the literature. Sometimes a literature will give you some insights. Suppose a particular, and very good thing, I think in next year, US probably in California, they are hosting a conference on empirical legal research, where they have asked the entries on, replication studies.
I'll be presenting at that conference.
You're
We can talk more about it if you wanted later on.
No, replication study. So suppose a good research has already been done. Like suppose I said why people obey the law. This research was done in America. Why can't you replicate this research in India with the same kind of research design? This is called replication study. I think in law, this is quite good to do these kinds of study. Because in replication study, suppose there are some very celebrated study, very well-known studies and research works, which have been done elsewhere. Now, you can do a replication study with a fresh kind of research design, with a fresh group and a fresh locale, and you can come out with some different, and then you can interpret why your findings are different. Replication study is a very good way of, So you have to, that's what I'm saying, in literature become very important. Now this is the use of literature. If you ask me how literature can help in formulating a research design, this is the example. I can replicate. So when we write a problem statement, it means we are talking about the problem of this study was to, or this study was concerned with this study is designed. You have to write these statements. Sometimes people do not really differentiate between the introduction and they think that problem is also a kind of introduction, another introduction. No, we are not talking about introduction, we are talking about problem identification and its drafting. So, now these things I will not really devote. I will come back to the study. There are several things, I think variable I will return in a minute. Let us go to some of the findings of this study. So now for this study, we have decided to take the offenses. Offenses of theft, personal violence, robbery, dacoity, attempted murder and rape cases in which the witnesses were, interviewed. So we have actually contacted around 800 witnesses. Now I'm telling you, this study was a very fascinating experience for me for several reasons. Number one, we have done this study only at the lower court. This is the first contact for the litigant. And can anybody imagine how to find the witnesses. This question was before me, because if you ask for the record, they will say name and the village name and the district name. There is no house, there is no street. You know, in India, it's very difficult to find the address, because it's a huge country and these addresses are not very specifically written. And I always keep a focus in the rural India, because if you have to understand the country, India, you have to take the examples from the countryside. Then you will come to know the real issues. Now please tell me, suppose I have to find the witnesses for this study, for my sample, where should I contact?
Advocate, court, president, advocate.
The advocates,
Secretary through police station.
police station, courts, advocate, and yeah. Then I faced this problem. Actually, I struggled. I'm telling you that I also did all this. I talked to the advocates. Now, advocates have different priorities.
The parties.
So parties, they are also a kind of party.
The accused are the other person. They will be the accused. Whatever witnesses he is bringing, he must be knowing them. And if he is willing to help us, he can give the details.
Yes. I know. So I tried, I think, most of these things, and I failed. I tell you, I failed. I am not going to reason, but I think those who work in the ground, Manzha is working, so he knows how to contact contacting the respondent is the major issue. So what I said, I will not go for a very strict sample design, because strict sample design require you to be kind of, if I say I'll do a stratified random sampling. Now for that you need to have a kind of very clear universe, defined universe. Here what I said, I have already decided the offenses here, So first thing was that at least I'll stick my sample to these offenses. And I have selected these 4 states, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, Maharashtra and Karnataka. And in these places, two districts from each court, we have taken. And we thought that we will go to the court premises. And witnesses are sitting, waiting for their turn. And you know how much time it takes. So every witness is called in the morning, 10 o'clock. So the court starts 11, but 10 o'clock they will come and they will sit throughout the day. And they have ample of time. So there is no place to sit actually. In courts there is no place to sit. So they are in the kind of lobbies and then here, there, in shops and all that. But there you can find it. So I have developed a kind of sampling process to identify and locate witnesses from the court premises itself. Of course, the advocates and parties' help was taken, but not in their place of residences. So the study was conducted in an open setting. Open setting means you have to go to the court. So ideal way would have been to go to their respective places and interview, but which was not possible. The research team visited the court premises to contact the witnesses concerning the cases. Now we have used different techniques.
Why have you confined your research to these 4 states only?
Yes, so basically this study was funded by the BPRND. So they were inclined that you please take sample from at least, if not the whole country, from 3 different regions. So sometime they have specified these are the states in which we would like the work to be located. So we have chosen from that list these 4 states which are giving different direction in terms of location also, like Maharashtra is western, then Rajasthan is other direction, then Karnataka is other. So we thought that we would be able to capture the experiences from different directions in the country. Now the method, as far as method was concerned, we had different methods in mind right from the beginning. But interview schedule was something which we did, and some focused discussion, especially in this thing, especially in some cases, 4 or 5 cases, you have 10, 20 witnesses. you can pose one problem and allow the witnesses to discuss that problem, and they will come out with certain responses, and those responses can be collected through interviews also and case laws. Now, very important thing was, I have a kind of limited this study into 4 perspectives, so that because mainly our objectives were dealing with 4 areas, so I think I said but this is more of writing. Let us go to the data analysis and tabulation. Now, in this study, incidentally, we had plans. I think the second phase of this study was more complex. We had done that also. But this was a simple frequency distribution, study. We are not putting tables here, but if you see, there is an original book, on witness in the criminal justice system. There is a book on this subject, which carries all the tables. We find some observation. Now, I am not discussing here. Please don't, push me to criminal law at the moment. I just want to focus on how the variables and information can be, culled, and extracted from a study. So if I find that 44% respondents were satisfied and 36 were not satisfied, and the remaining so and so satisfied to some extent with police behavior. If you look at my hypothesis was dealing with, if you see this hypothesis, can you see? Are you able to read it? You all know English. Sorry. So, if this is my hypothesis, so I wanted the witnesses to really tell us. So we have created a Likert scale. Likert scale means 5-point scale. So on a 5-point scale, we studied their degree of satisfaction towards the police behavior, because witness and police interaction is very important. So if you want to collect some data about the degree of satisfaction with police behavior, then you have to ask few questions in your interview schedule. So we have asked around 10 questions on this particular issue, and then we have tabulated those questions here, and you can see some results were generated out of it. So here I am saying, and the police behavior, they are belonging to weaker set. Now I have brought another variable. I am trying to know, so my hypothesis is whether there is any trait that you can identify along with police satisfaction vis-a-vis their social background. So does it mean whether their satisfaction to police behavior varies along with social profile? Whether social profile defines the level of satisfaction on the part of witnesses towards police behavior. Are you getting my point?
See, can you have such a hypothesis where you require a consistent relationship or some possible relationship, like in your hypothesis you use the word normally, preferably, generally. Can you have such kind of hypothesis?
Yes. Actually what happens is, in hypothesis drafting you do.
Yeah, generally, normally, preferably.
What happens is, I think it's again a very interesting question. When you draft a hypothesis, you have many ways to draft it. One hypothesis is declarative. X and Y are related to each other. But hypothesis is a refined version of your assumption. What I said is a refined version of your assumption. So my assumption is, I am tentative in my assumption that probably the police is generally decent to the educated people. I can say police is always decent to. This also can be a hypothesis. But when I draft it, that police is generally decent to the educated people, I want, because this shows the degree of certitude on the part of the person who is drafting the hypothesis. It doesn't make much difference. Even if I write police is always decent to the educated people, and if I do the analysis and find some results, I can prove and disprove. It doesn't matter. So I think in terms of drafting, it doesn't make much difference. Only thing is, I want to convey my hypothesis in a particular way.
Some amount of certainty in that
In that relation. So
Assumption.
that's why I'm saying there are three types of relationship that we pose in hypothesis: positive relation, negative relation, and co-variational relationship. I'll give you an example. I said increase in X leads to increase in Y. Positive. Increase in X, decrease in Y. Then X and Y has something to do with each other, with each other. This is co-variational. So some change is happening. If I say there is a change, if some change happens in X, then some change will happen Y. I am not sure whether it is positive. So whenever you draft hypothesis, these three types of relationship will figure. So this hypothesis is probably, when I put preferably, certainly, then probably I am not sure whether it is a kind of cause and effect relationship. Rather, I say these things covariate. And rest would be answered by the data. We are giving just kind of, see, in other words, the function of the hypothesis is just to place the variables in certain situation to be able to examine. So you are basically placing the variables in a sentence. So Delhi University, when I did the Viva other day, hypothesis was half page. So half page hypothesis I saw. I was unable to make out that what is the, why have you done? They said no sir, hypothesis continues. And नीचे लिखा था CONTD, continued. I said please stop somewhere. You have to. So hypothesis, ideally it should be a one sentence. If you are not able to write in one sentence, please don't write. उसके बाद गलत ही लिख रहे होंगे आप. जो कुछ लिखना है वो लिख चुके आप एक sentence. After that you won't be able to write. The first thing is you have to write one sentence, two variables, and a relationship. This is hypothesis. Hypothesis is not a rocket science. Now let us see. I have placed certain variables here. So I have introduced not only two variables, I said that there is a third variable also. So I want to understand that people's satisfaction to the police varies according to their social background. Now this is a research question. Now we have to test whether this is correct or not. So if I say educated people are more likely to have positive attitudes towards police. So I am studying police conduct. Police conduct is generally bad if people, yes. But if you start looking at contextualization of the issue, you have to bring the context. Now let us look at some other finding. Study the majority of the witnesses had to come to the court to 2 to 3 times for hearing, and number was seen almost equal in all the state. So this is a general observation, means majority of the witnesses, if not majority, but yes, 40% had to come, means they had to come court 2 to 3 times. Now this is a one dimension. So I think your study will generate two types of data. One is one variable, one dimensional data, which is called the distribution, which is called the frequency. So I have now, if I ask how many times a person has gone to the court for the purpose of hearing, he said 3 times, 4 times. So my research at the moment is only saying 40% have to go 2 to 3. Now this is not enough. I want to understand who are these people, with what offenses they are associated with, which state, whether a particular state had a greater tendency of concentrating these kinds of people. Now here the imagination of the researcher becomes important. Imagination of the researcher means what are the crucial variables relevant to your study which you can incorporate into this. Suppose I take this one. What are the factors that you would like to bring in? Can anybody suggest me? I am posing that witnesses had to go more than once to the court. Now what are the other variables which can contextualize this finding in a better way? Offenses. So it could, So my research, what would be the research query? Whether the distribution of these witnesses has a tendency to concentrate any particular category of offences. Ability to raise sharp queries and research is the main. I am telling you, people try to find answer. I always say, please develop the capacity to raise questions. In research, if you are able to create the queries, then only you can find answer. Most people fail to create right kinds of queries for yourself. Please note down this. Ability to create queries.
Are you referring to the cases pending before the court? The court of witness.
Ongoing cases also.
Then what is the relevance of that hearing? 3 times, 4 times?
Which means the
Case is still pending, na?
cases will pending and the case is still on by the time they have already. Now, so another variable could be whether, so suppose if I say that average a case prolongs 5 years, how many times in 5 years? This can also be done. I think we have done it, I will show you. Now, majority of the respondents in this study found adjournments to be quite frequent. This is perceptional basically. The study suggests the witnesses' consent were
How
mostly
that can be
improper.
perceptional, sir?
Pardon?
This is empirical. The previous question which you referred.
No, I asked, see, the question is adjournment. I am not going into the legal at the moment discussion. Problem is, adjournment is a serious issue because that is the core problem because of which the case is delayed and witnesses suffer. So I find how the adjournments impact the parties. So some accused enjoy, witness suffer. Study suggests the witnesses' contents were mostly property offences and witnesses by pressure. Yes, how a person was made witness in a case. Because suppose in a village crime investigation is going on, witnesses are, who is the witness? So sometimes by force they are taken into, sometimes they are pressurized to be a witness. So in this case I find the witnesses by pressure, 45%. Oh, this is
How many are paid witnesses?
that is another difficult question. So they were mostly in property offense. So research is saying that most witnesses in this category belong to property offenses. So in property offenses, the witnesses by pressure. Now that is the importance of research. Otherwise, we know very tentatively about witnesses. There are witnesses, they are pressurized. But here, with certain degree of certitude, we are in a position to indicate a kind of larger trend which is emerging and which is quite representative in terms of the Indian situation. The finding of this study, can I take 5 minutes more?
Sure.
Findings of this study suggest that the subjects were physically assaulted. Now, many had the experience of being physically assaulted after being witnesses. So sometimes because becoming witnesses means you are also, kind of, castigated as a party. So in fact, 39% felt that they had physical violence against them also. Now they largely belong to, now I am putting a state into context. Which state? So Rajasthan, we find that this was happening more. And also noted in Karnataka. Lowest number of such instances were from Karnataka.
Have you classified this data into eyewitnesses or primary witnesses and secondary witnesses for the purpose of analysis?
No. I tell you, frankly not. Because that was not possible. I tried, because the category of witnesses is also very important. But we have divided them into offense-wise. That also makes a lot of sense because of being witness in a property offense, in a violent cases or in sexual offenses, all those things are different. Then you look at those appeared 2 to 3 times, those 43, mainly belong to backward classes. Now there is a class character also. So mostly people come from backward classes as against general classes. Findings of this research suggest that as compared to witnesses from relatively underprivileged classes were more likely to be pressurized to become. Now this is also a sort of finding. I am not trying to generalize it because generalization is very difficult. Now, the study indicates that several types of pressure used to make the witnesses to trust their estate. Now, I am saying witnesses are also forced to twist their testimony. So muscle power and money power, which is a very, now I have taken this from a judgment. So judgment was delivered where judge said money and muscle power is rampant as far as witnesses' pressures are concerned. I said, let me test the extent to which it is prevalent. I found this is really happening. Almost you will find 31% and 39% there. And the story goes on. The witnesses with lower educational background experience physical assault after being witnesses, and uneducated respondents figure predominantly in this case. So a lot of things. Now one thing as a matter of limitation of this study, which I did later, what happens is, I think which Professor William will tell. Now the next step would have been in this, suppose I say the class background and the pressure has a relationship. We have to statistically examine whether this relationship is significant or not. And also we have to know, I think it takes me to little statistics, but I think I'll leave it to, and if time permits, we can discuss some other time. We have to understand your data is on one of the 4 scales. Generally in social science, the data is, either nominal or ordinal. What is nominal and ordinal? Probably you will be telling.
We'll be discussing the data now.
I think. So the data means this is a social science. So our data is not really purely quantitative in that sense. What is nominal and what is ordinal? I think this discussion will take me very far. And depending on the scale of the data, because this question can be asked, though you have not asked, you have been listening to me, but you can always ask this question. What does say? What does it define as to whether this relationship is genuine or random or by chance? If 2 variables I have posed, what is the degree of their relationship? So there I have to apply certain statistical tests. I may, if the data is non-parametric, again I am using non-parametric generally. If nominal and ordinal data is there, then you use inherently the non-parametric statistics. So we have certain non-parametric tests to measure the relationship between the variables. Now this is little, I think, away from the discussion of today's class. But this study goes on, giving you certain findings, which primarily says, yes, I said yesterday, that when we look at trial, or suppose you are doing a research in the IPR, or if you are looking at a tribunal, challenge is, can you design a study where quantitative observation and data analysis is possible? This is something very important. Doing research is not important, I am telling you. Conceptualizing the research is important. Because empirical research then becomes easy. Once you are at your stage of clearly identifying your variables, your hypothesis, and you have collected the data, rest computer can help you. And then you can go on. Any question? Yes.
That how many hypotheses can be in a research, and that how many variables can be proved in a research. Suppose that I am talking right to food, there can be economic rights, then there can be right to food, right to water, right to employment. All these variables can be accommodated in one research.
No, see, I never say that what is the correct number of us. I would always say that you read these things looking at the nature of your research problem. You have to find out whether your research problem require all those hypotheses or not. If they are 3, if they are 4, if they are 5, that is not important. Important is you should be adequately covering the issues which you have focused in your research problem. So suppose I end up with 4 hypotheses. Now 4 hypotheses means I am examining in each hypothesis at least 2 variables. But please remember, these two variables are figuring in one hypothesis, but in your study you can crisscross all these variables together to create new set of data. So suppose in hypothesis number 1, I have posed two variables. In hypothesis number 3, I have another two variables. But I have always opportunity to examine the variable in number 3 hypothesis with number 1 also. In other words, one study can generate 500 variables. That is not a problem. But I think adequate coverage is important. Yes. Yes.
I would like to ask one question with my limited scope of understanding about relation of hypothesis with research objective. What I understood that we formulate the hypothesis according to the number of the objective, how many number of objectives have been taken. The problem is that usually I come across with a confrontation with my colleagues sometimes. I feel that on every objective there can be only one hypothesis. Once we have formed the hypothesis, we cannot go with the research question.
Yes.
I wish to make this thing clear whether there can be the research question and hypothesis both can stand together on relating to one objective.
Several times I think I have answered this question in these workshops. I always say that the literature on this subject is very clear. Research question is a kind of like, do you watch movies? No? So sometimes, like if you have to, you know, kind of, suppose, how should I say, like in nursery school, if a child has to learn the counting, a lot of rhymes are given. So research questions are like rhymes. When you are novice and that territory is completely unknown, probably you will go for research question. But I think research question or hypothesis, they are in the question form, but as I think I would like to agree with you that both the things may not be very fitting, because ultimately the question remains whether you pose hypothesis or research question. That is not important, is what you are going to do with them. What I have seen this whole problem, that you should be clear about why I am making these hypotheses. If you are not clear, don't make them. Please don't make them. Otherwise the same thing happened, which I have given you example yesterday. The point is, hypothesis is created with a clear objective, or research questions are also. But I think if you have formulated a hypothesis with those variables, then there is no need to formulate any research question, because you have already taken care of those variables, which you will ultimately take. My whole point is, what are the stages and the, the process of verifying the hypothesis? I think you should concentrate there. So even yesterday I said, again it is not in the scope of this talk, but I said that even if you have created a hypothesis in doctrinal research, now which is very unusual to think, that many people say, how? I said you have collected a lot of material. Now can you use this material to examine the hypothesis that you have posed? And that linkage must be found very clear. I think why research is considered to be important, all the material that you have gathered must address the hypothesis. If you are not able to give that direction to your material, so sometimes material is independently figuring your thesis, and your hypothesis is also going along. You have to bring material closer to the hypothesis to be able to examine that hypothesis with the otherwise that material is of no consequence.
Sir.
Because hypothesis also give you direction to go in that literature, particular specifically.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Let me just rephrase this question. And there's one lot of confusion regarding hypothesis and objective. See, my question is, do you think hypothesis determines objectives or objectives determine hypothesis? I think there's a lot of confusion regarding this.
Objectives would determine hypothesis.
So one more thing I would like to
Objectives
with this
is
particular
determine hypothesis.
as Adams have said that when we form the hypothesis, we start collecting, picking the literature which support my hypothesis, and we will ignore the remaining literature.
Pardon?
You could do this in a discussion session.
I think I also. So we'll hand over at this stage. We can have some discussion. Please hold on. So over to you.